you can take glass and you can add different things to it. Like if you add gold oxide to glass, you get red. Insulators don't come in red. There's only one insulator known, made by Whitehall Tatum, that has been found in kind of a deep red color, similar to that bottle up there. And very few bottles are made in red glass either. So copper oxide and gold oxide in different mixtures can give you the ruby to deep pigeon blood glass color. Put out a newsletter every quarterly, I believe it is, and you can join the National Association for about $12. So if anybody is interested in connecting up with a little bit more about insulators, we have a national show every year. This year it will be in Sandwich, Illinois. I will be there, and I have been to probably 6 or 7 of the nationals, and they are really, really exciting to go to. Yes?
What's the date on that? At Sandwich, Illinois?
I believe it is July, but I think it's the week after. 2 glass plates with cloth soaked in acid in between them. Kind of a sticky acid, and the wire ran through these 2 plates. It prevented it at least from dissipating. The wires themselves, if they lose the power, by connecting up with the pole, it'll go down and into the ground and disappear. So they had to protect the wires from losing the power, otherwise they only could send electrical current or a telegraph message maybe a mile or 2, the earliest ones. And so they had to find really good quality insulation for that. Glass turned out to be the best, and that's exactly what they started with. About 1849 is when the telegraph was just starting to take off. They found that it had great use in terms of letting people know that there was a train coming. And so along the railroad lines is where they were. And of course, during the Civil War, communications became extremely important. Instant communication. You needed to know where battle movements were, and so a lot of the insulators, that's when they started to really produce great quantities. Now, some of the oldest ones, of course, did not have threads in them. And I have a few of the extremely early insulators. This one is not complete. It has a finish on the book. This was a tree insulator, and they wired it to a tree. The glass came up like this, and then there was just a slot, and they slid the wire down in it, and then there were little catches on it so that it wouldn't bounce out of there. But these were made by the Cutter Glass Company. They were, or maybe the patent was Cutter, and this one was just hooked up to a tree, and you could get very quick communications. And they would throw the wire on as the military was moving through an area. They could string up wires in real short order with something like that. Then, as they started to move west, they needed to go long distance, and they needed some more secure, permanent types of insulators. So they came up with, this one of course has no threads in it, so there's nothing to hold it on. They just hammered them onto the pole and just bang. And of course, when they tried to get them off, they had to hit them with a hammer on the other end, and so almost all of them are damaged along the bottom. Almost all threadless insulators that you find are going to have some damage along the base. This is called a wade. It's a very thick piece of wood that was on the peg there. And then this was inserted into a wooden cover shaped like a beehive over the top. Then the wire was tied around this wooden cover. I have seen almost perfect condition wades with the wooden cover. And they're about a $1,200 item. I don't happen to have the wooden cover for this. This one I bought on Klingensmith's auction, and he also sells bottles, as you know. But this is what probably goes back to the 1850s, early 60s. so they came up with this mechanism. It's a block of wood. It's got the original square peg nail in it. And at the bottom is what they call a ram's horn. And you can see why. It has a curl in it. If I put a wire in here and put a little bend in it, it'll snap down into there, and then when the tension is on it, it won't pop out of there. And so ram's horns are some of the earliest, from about 1860, 59, something in that nature. And then they decided that that this kind of gutta percha or whatever is in here, they replaced that later on with glass, and they used them for about 10 years. These were used mostly locally for short distances. They weren't a great insulator. I'm not sure, but it's probably in the Smithsonian today. I told my students about that, and they said, well, let's go out and see if we can find it. But it's certainly in some historical place. This insulator came from that line.
Oh,
this
cool.
has UPRR on the back. It was hammered off. It was found in a stagecoach station dump in Rawlins, Wyoming. And that some guy dug out several hundred of these. There were only a handful, however, that were in the cobalt. And I happened to get one of these. Unfortunately, it's not in very good condition. I had a trailer fire in 1972, and I lost a big portion of my insulator collection. They came in with the hose. They hit my hot insulators. They just shattered. This one, fortunately, only cracked across the top, and I glued it back together again because it's a prized possession of mine. But this is threadless from about 1869 or 70, and then from that point on, then they didn't have too many of these. These were hammered onto the pole. Sometimes they put sort of a sticky glue substance on it to hold it. But the main one was put on. You can notice that there's kind of a cloth look to this peg. This is an original threadless peg. It was soaked in sulfur and canvas, was put over the thing, and then when they hammered it on, the cloth expanded inside and it held the insulator fairly closely. Occasionally they would pop off, and so they needed something to hold them on. This is the insulator supposedly that came with that. So this is a threadless insulator. Threadless insulators start at about 100 and go on up into the tens of thousands. So if anybody ever comes across one of these, let me know. I'd like another one. They only sell for 10, 15 bucks, but you never see them. So I'd like to have another one. These, back when you were kids on the farmer's pole, there was one here and one here sticking out like that, and they actually they screw down on there like that. You can hand thread these pegs, and that's often what they did. They took the old wooden pegs, and they had a machine, and they would just screw down on it, and they rethreaded a lot of them. And of course, they still to this day, there are a few insulators still sitting up on the threaded pegs. Now, what I'm going to do in the house. Now, if lightning hit that, what happened to it? What happened to the lightning? It had to be grounded, but it couldn't touch the wood or the shingles or anything else. So they had to have an insulator. These are insulators. This one is patent dated 1851. Give you some idea how long ago they were put together. This one is what they call teal green. It's a real pretty green color, made by the inventor Otis. And so this sat up on the barn. I'm not exactly sure how they worked, but they usually had sort of a metal clamp of some kind that attached, and then I don't know if the cable went through there or exactly how they worked. To get that color, it's mostly iron. How many have seen those early wine bottles from the 17 and 1800s? What color are they? They're almost black. Yeah, they're so dark and green that they're almost black. Why are they almost always greenish color? Because what did you suppose they heated up the sand in? An iron cauldron. And after the first bottles that came out were maybe a light green. And as they heated them hotter and hotter and they dug out more and more of the glass, it got down toward the bottom, and the iron would actually get into the glass, and it would cause it to turn darker and darker to almost what they call black glass. That dark green, of course, is iron oxide from the cauldron itself. And they didn't like that green color. Everybody wanted clear glass. So they came up with the idea, using optical chemistry, that if they were to add traces of manganese dioxide to the glass itself, what happened was the prism would combine and they would end up with a full spectrum of light coming through. So it eliminated the color coming through only in the blues and greens, and it allowed more different colors to come through. However, manganese dioxide, and I'm sure you don't remember your high school chemistry maybe well enough to remember, there is a transformation from manganese dioxide into something called permanganate. Have you heard of that? Permanganate is the sun-produced ion that comes from manganese added to the glass. And when the sun sits on, beats down on it for years and years. If you take some of your bottles that you've got in your collection and you stick them outside for a while, you might be surprised how many of those would turn to what they call sun-colored amethyst, a purple color. And some of them get pretty dark. And I can prove it to you. That is the sun that's doing it. Here is a lightning rod insulator that was clamped to the side of a barn many, many years ago, and the sun beat down on it and turned it purple. However, under the clamp, it's clear.
Very cool.
So originally the whole thing was that particular color, and then the sun did that to it. Now that insulator that you see there is cobalt blue. The one on the far, your right, that is an insulator that came from Belarus, probably made in Russia or Poland, we're not sure. But this is what cobalt blue looks like. If you put large numbers of it, well, large amounts of it in there, it gets darker and darker until it's almost black. This next one is a Minnesota insulator. We were fortunate to have these on the Sioux line. There was one of these on virtually every pole. This is one of the most expensive and most sought after insulators that you can find. And I'll bet you that you have people in here that have run across these. This is called peacock blue. It has a little bit of the iron in it now because there is less blue and it's starting to get a greenish tinge to it. It's hard to see perhaps, but this has got a little bit of green in it now. As you take away blue and add more green, you get what's known as blue aqua, and then you get the traditional aqua color. This insulator comes from California. It's from the 1870s, and these are extremely sought-after insulators. They're made by the Electrical Construction and Maintenance Company of San Francisco, and everybody wants an EC&M. So these sell for $2 to $2.50 in decent shape, and again, they were brittle glass. They all tend to have some damage on them. Adding more and more of the green from the iron and less of the blues from the copper and the cobalt, you get, this one is referred to as probably a true green. You get, next to it is the 7-Up green, very much like the Hauenstein bottle over on the side. And then going more and more to the greens and adding yellows, you end up, this is referred to as yellow-green. Taking away more blue, you get olive green. Now, do bottles come in olive greens very often?
Yeah, peas are, that's not peas.
Some of them do? Okay. Yeah, I don't see too many green bottles, especially in this this olive green. I see an occasional one maybe in the 7-Up. Coming this way, these are Canadian insulators. They have little diamonds on them. They're referred to as ponies. Any small insulator that was probably used on a telephone line, in a rural telephone line, low voltage, are referred to as ponies. And so all your ones, they have a single skirt on them, the bottom. These were made in Canada. There are people that collect nothing but the diamonds. There's a diamond on each one, and it's one of the specialty collectors. There's a book that comes out just on the diamond ponies. Going farther, this is yellow olive green with a tinge of mustard, and then you get into this mustard yellow color. These get very expensive. They're in the $400 to $700 range when you get into the true mustard colors. And finally, all the blue is gone, and we're down here with yellow amber. I don't know if I've ever seen a bottle in this bright yellowish amber color. There's some, maybe some historicals are in that.
And bitters.
Vinegar
bitters.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Are they quite rare?
Yeah.
Okay.
well, you're the chemist. There's a story that the sun-colored amethyst, it's a manganese.
3,000 overnight. So that of course, the milk comes from zinc oxide that's put in the glass. They get kind of a white milky appearance. And I know that milk glass is common in bottles as well. There's a company, one of the earliest big companies out east was the Brookfield, New York Glass Company. And Brookfield probably was the second largest producer of insulators in America. They made insulators that were very structurally strong, they lasted pretty well, and they were pretty cheap. Now, I have a group of insulators here that are referred to as Krebs, Crown Embossed Brookfields, C-R-E-B, Krebs. So if you see any insulator that has markings up here, you might see the Brookfield name on there. This is the one that comes in the amethyst color. I found this one out east or west of Fargo. This one is lavender. It's kind of a grayish lavender tinge to it. And these are very expensive. They're quite much rarer than the purples. Then they also, this one is called light sapphire blue. And then they come in the yellow green. Now, I'm going to shut much prettier than the, I don't like, fluorescent isn't always true, but sunlight is hard to duplicate, so this is probably about as close as we can get. Then there was a company called the Chicago Insulating Company. They made an insulator that had, instead of having a groove around it, it's a series of diamond-shaped parts. And the reason they made them, I understand, is that they had these projections here, which, if receiving a blow, wouldn't shatter the insulator. They would just bust off a little piece, preserving the insulating quality. So these are called, referred to as a Chicago diamond because of the shape of the grooves in there. This one has a tadpole on the top. I don't know if you can see it or not.
What year was that one you're talking about?
This one?
Was that what
This-
you were just talking about?
Yeah, this is a Chicago diamond. Yeah, this was probably made around 1885. They were found on the Highway 169 line going north of the cities. There's a few of them there. I ran across this for $1 in a junk shop. Very fortunate. This particular insulator is quite scarce. It's a pony from California Electric Works. I don't know if you can see the CEW on the embossing. One of the real rare sought-after ponies. This pony has a double groove. A lot of times what they did in the rural areas, they needed 2 lines coming off from one peg. And so they would have one wire coming here, then they would have a drop line that would come around here, and that would come to the farm. So they would have use what they call a barrel insulator, or keg is another name for these with double grooves on them. The Ohio Valley Glass Company. They also made bottles, by the way. I don't know if they're embossed OBG or not. Here's an unusual style where you can see the double groove is near the top. Got one of these from Australia. They're made by the AG Glass Company. It says AG on there. This one is referred to as the doorknob. It has a wide groove. I'm not exactly sure what they used them and how they used them with that big wide groove on there, but maybe it was for fast replacement or something. This is a Canadian insulator. That one probably has the selenium that this gentleman was referring to. Selenium gives you this straw coloring to it. And then, of course, chromium was used as another coloring agent. Chrome comes from the word color. Chromatic means colorful. And so when you use chromium, they used to spray that on the outside. This is called flashed glass. The chromium does not go all the way through the glass, and you get this amber just on the outside. It's called flashed glass. If they used smaller amounts of chromium, it didn't turn brown, it turned into what we refer to as carnival glass. The reason it's called carnival glass is that you didn't win teddy bears back in 1930 when your great-grandfather took great-grandmother to the fair and they won something. They would get a vase or a plate, and it would be carnival glass. This one here is, you'd never guess what this one is called.
Mickey
Mouse.
That's for heavier cables, and then of course they tied them around like that. There was a need out west for insulators, and instead of sticking up on the pole, hung down from the beams. Where do you suppose that was?
Yeah, tunnels.
Yeah, in tunnels or mines. And so this is what they came up with. They came up with an insulator that was threaded all the way through, and then they would screw it up from the bottom and then put the wire on there. Here's what they call a double transposition. If you're riding along and you get static on your radio, the reason might be that the telegraph lines produce an electromagnetic field around the wire. That's how motors are produced. Well, to prevent that, what they would do is they would run the wire here, and then on the next pole, they would drop it to the bottom of one of these insulators. And so it would go like this, and the wires would switch places, thereby disrupting that magnetic field, and it would eliminate some of the static. And then, of course, this is Canadian also. These are some of my favorites. These are the Canadian diamonds. I ran across this one last summer up in an antique shop in Canada. And this is a particularly rare one. It's extremely light amethyst. I'm looking for a bottom for this. If I can find a match for this one, I've got about a $400 pair. And this one's a little bit darker. And then they just, the peg like that, and they just screw them on together. Of course, this is a color that I don't think many bottles were made in. This is referred to as opal or opalescent color. And I believe that's nothing more than zinc oxide that's put in the glass. But they only put a light amount of it in there so that it reflects color in different ways, like a miniature prism. And so that's why you see that colored effect on that.
Who made that, do you know?
Unfortunately, mine isn't bent. It's got the damage that's on the bottom. But this is the EC&M. They were used all across California, Washington, Oregon, and Arizona, and they are still trying. They're digging around poles and coming up with some of these. As a matter of fact, there was a rare insulator found by digging around a pole about 2 months ago, and it was pictured in the latest Crown Jewels. It's about an $8,000 to $10,000 volt insulator. But this one has got some damage on it. But if you were to go out and find insulators that have been lying in the ground since maybe 1950, when they threw them down on the ground, most of them would probably have about this much of the insulator sticking out. As the grass, it actually turns to soil. And then, of course, you get stuff blowing in and everything else. And so I have found insulators that are almost completely submerged. I suppose when they get rained on, they even, can sink down in the mud.
So you suppose
To show the different chess pieces. And, of course, this one goes in the corner. But to get one of these, you got to spend $1,000 for each corner. Mine isn't quite that expensive. It lost some of its porcelain. Was dipped into the glaze, and then they were set like this, and so they don't have any glaze on the top of the insulator. I don't know why they got by with that, because I would think that after a while, without any protection from the elements, you're going to get some damage done to the top, or maybe some loss of insulation quality. But this one goes back about 1885. That insulator. And this one, I have a number of them from different countries. This one was brought back by a friend of mine from Saudi Arabia. And I left all of the mud and dirt. That's Saudi Arabia dust inside there. And some sort of tar or paint or whatever they use. I don't know how it got that on.
It's oil.
Maybe it's oil. But anyway, that of course is not particularly valuable, but it's very valuable. And, two of mine were there on display. Northwest Insulator Club. Actually, it's supposed to be Northwestern, but I was the last May I was in Germany, and we were staying with some people over there, and they wanted to keep in touch. And his name was Gunter, and I said, Gunter, he took us out to, do you know where the old Iron Curtain used to be? Oh, yeah, he says, that's only a few miles from here. It's kind of on the border of Bavaria. And he took us down there, and there's a section that they left from the original Iron Curtain. And they've got the fence up for, maybe 30 feet or something like that, and they got the barbed wire on it, and there's a cement trench and so on, that made it difficult for people to scoot across. And on the top of the line, there was barbed wire with electricity. And here were some insulators sitting up there. Now, of course, I wasn't going to shinny up there and damage history. But I said, Gunter, if you ever run across one of those insulators, I want you to get it for me, and I'll pay you whatever you need to have for it. Well, about 2 weeks ago, I get a package in the mail. And this is an insulator. It's probably the only one in the United States. But this is an insulator from the top of the Iron Curtain.
Wow.
he went up there, huh?
He said he bought it from, as much as I could read his German, he said it sounds like he bought it at some company that had scrap metal or collected that kind of thing, and he happened to run across it.
Wow.